Welcome back, everybody. This is still PlanetFest, and we are still very glad that you are with us. I'm Matt Kaplan, of course, the host and producer of Planetary Radio, usually hiding just behind a microphone, but happy once again today to both be able to see and be seen by our two very distinguished guests that we are happy to have with us today. In fact, we are very proud to have with us today. I want to apologize to those of you who would have liked to interact with our guests live. We're unable to do that, of course, because had we done this at 4 p.m. Pacific on Saturday, Amran Saraf would have been up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he has enough things to keep him busy without worrying about us that early in the morning. And Andrew Jones, who you see also in the picture, coming to us from Helsinki, Finland, it would have been nearly as early as that for Andrew. So let me tell you a little bit about our distinguished guest. Amran Sharaf is the Emirates Mars Mission Project Director. He also directs the Programs Management Department at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center in the United Arab Emirates. And in addition to his leadership of the Hope mission, Amran worked on the Dubai Sat-2 Earth observation satellite launched in 2013. He actually has quite a long list of credits in this area. Lots of successes, which of course led to him leading this extremely successful mission. Amran, I shouldn't have taken this long to get to it. Congratulations on behalf of all of us who are watching this, all of us at the Planetary Society, on the successful orbital insertion of Hope.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much for your kind introduction and for your kind wishes also. It was an important day in the history of the UAE, also in the history of the region, and feels good to be at this point.
I bet it does, as it should. Andrew Jones is a contributing editor to the Planetary Society. He's a Finland-based journalist who covers international space developments, especially China's space program, because, of course, not quite 24 hours after the success of Amran and his team with Hope, Tianwen-1 arrived in orbit around Mars. Andrew's work is also seen regularly at space.com and Space News. You'll find him on Twitter, where he is at AJ_FI. FI for Finland, Andrew?
I think that was the case. It was a long time ago.
Well, welcome to you as well. And of course, Andrew, you and I get to talk on a semi-regular basis on Planetary Radio, where you bring us up to date, particularly on what's happening with the Chinese program. And we're going to come back to that in just moments, Andrew, and I hope that you will also join me in conversing with Amran about the Hope mission as well. Again, Amran, congratulations to you and your entire team. I was watching last Tuesday when that pandemonium broke out among your team and others there in the UAE and around the world as you got the confirmation that Hope had successfully achieved orbit around the red planet. I just want to say the camera was on you periodically. You looked overwhelmed. You looked like maybe somebody should have found you a chair. How did that feel?
Well, I mean, a lot of people told me that, I did look quite, some people couldn't read me. Some people said that I looked overwhelmed. Some people they said that you looked as if you were going to bring a bad news. Some people were like, it was difficult to understand your facial expressions. To be honest, I was just focused on what needs to be done. And the moment I actually did the announcement, I was still in shock, actually. I mean, I was confident before MOI. I was worried, very worried. I was stressed and at the same time proud, at the same time very confident about the work that the team did. So that moment just hit me quite like as a surprise, and even though I was prepared for it to make an announcement whether it's a success or not. But I saw the 7 years that passed like run in front of me in a second. And it took me a couple of minutes just to realize that this is happening. and maybe that's why, I don't know, to be honest, why I was looking the way I was looking. Which I guess the good thing is that the news was positive, the news was good, and we've succeeded in reaching Mars.
I thought that I saw all of that complex of emotions and thoughts on your face. I'm glad I wasn't reading too much in, if that was your sense of it as well. I have some slides, and we're going to start with, I think, this beautiful one, which of course is an artist's conception of your spacecraft in orbit at Mars. There is Hope. Tell us, what is the current status of the spacecraft? Is it healthy?
The spacecraft is healthy. About 4 hours. So right after insertion, we had a very quick look meeting in which we just make sure that the spacecraft is fine, the subsystems are working fine. 4 hours after that, we had a more detailed discussion about the whole system and the subsystems, and also about basically the trajectory that we entered in with, and also the orbit that we ended up with. And then around 8 a.m. The next day, which was about 6 hours after that meeting ended, we had that final meeting in which we assessed the orbit that we were in, the capture orbit, and it was as per our requirements. We also assessed the status of the spacecraft and basically the overall performance of the system and how well it did in the MOI process. We had to make a decision on whether we want to go ahead with a trajectory correction maneuver, and if we needed to do so. And the decision was a no-go, which is a good thing. And right after that, we had another meeting to discuss basically officially transitioning from the Mars orbit insertion phase into the transition phase, so the transition phase. Basically transitioning to science. So the spacecraft is sound, the spacecraft is fine, it's working well, and we are starting our calibration process for this instrument and very soon, and preparing for us transitioning into our science orbit in 2 months from now, and hopefully less than 2 months.
So there will be another burn to achieve that science orbit, and that's when we'll start to see the science data that so many of your colleagues on the science team are anticipating?
Yes. So basically, 2 months from now, we should be in our science orbit, and we start our science phase. By September this year, we hope to release our science data, no restrictions, and basically we have a special platform set up for that to give access to everyone around the world to our data.
Excellent. All very good news. My next slide, you'll remember this day very well, I think. That day when Hope began its journey to Mars. And of course, this happened in Japan. Can you talk about that day and how the decision was made to take advantage of this collaboration with the Japanese Space Agency, JAXA, to achieve your launch? So
the launch, it's a contract that we signed it with MHI, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, the developer of this rocket. So it was between us, the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, and them directly. As a rocket, it has a heritage, and also at the same time, it had the performance that we needed. And obviously, the cost, from the cost point of view, was one of the best options. So that's why we decided to go with it. The job of this rocket ended about 1 hour after launch, when our spacecraft separated from the launch vehicle and basically deployed the solar panels and was turned on. And from there on, all the way to us reaching this point, we've been purely relying on our Delta V thrusters and our propulsion system that was developed by the Emirates Mars mission team for the trajectory correction maneuvers that took place. We had about 4 of them during the cruise phase, and also for the Mars orbit insertion. With the launch, as you remember, we had a very limited window. And that was basically a three-week window in which you had to launch with. And unfortunately, we had to miss the beginning of the window. We had to change the launch dates, I think, about 3 times, because of the weather. So our mission was at risk because of COVID, because unlike, let's say, the other missions, for example, China's missions and the US mission, they all launch from their own geographical territory. So they don't have to send it abroad. In our case, countries were shutting down, borders were being closed, airspaces and airfields were being closed, and basically our launch was at risk. The good thing is that the team anticipated or raised a risk because of that and put all the worst case scenario basically plans in place. And we operated under worst case scenario. And as we were operating under that, we actually saw how the world was shutting down. So we managed to actually get it there on time. Our launch campaign was supposed to be 50 days, but basically our team had to stay there with the spacecraft for 4 months. So we had to ship it earlier, which put a load on us also. But it happened. So it was quite, how to say, stressful period for the whole team. A lot of sacrifices from team members, a lot of running around, getting the approvals needed from the UAE government, from the Japanese government, and trying to figure out any airline that will be basically taking our team to Japan. So, but the team managed to make it happen, and we are around Mars today, which is good.
That's what counts. Yeah,
Yes.
makes it all worthwhile. I'm going to go to another slide here that will bring us back to the science. And I'm hoping that maybe you can use this slide to take us through the science that you hope will accomplish there in Mars orbit.
So we, as you can see on the slide, we have 3 science instruments on board the Hope probe. We have the EXI, which is an imager with scientific applications. We have an infrared spectrometer and an ultraviolet spectrograph. All of them work together to actually generate data about the Martian atmosphere. So our main science here is basically to study the relationship between the lower layer and the upper layer of the Martian atmosphere and the escape rate of hydrogen and oxygen. But what makes this mission unique is that holistic view. So for the first time, the scientific community around the world will get a holistic view of the Martian atmosphere at different times of the day, at different seasons, using actual data, not simulated data based on models. So that's what makes this mission unique. And this is what we're trying to bring back to humanity. And obviously these questions and these investigations were generated based on the recommendations of the Mars science community. So we worked closely with members from MEPAC that helped us generate these questions. And we hope that answering these questions would lead to much more questions that needs to be investigated, whether by our mission in the future, let's say in the extended mission, or by any other nation.
And MEPAC, of course, that group that works to coordinate what we need to explore, what we still need to learn about Mars, which we talk about on this on Planetary Radio periodically. I'm going to ask you to stretch a little bit because I know that you work with the science team, but it's your job to make sure the spacecraft gets there and delivers the science. But it is these remaining questions about the atmosphere of Mars, which I know some of your colleagues and collaborators at University of Colorado are still investigating with their MAVEN spacecraft. Can you talk a little bit, at least at a high level, about why learning more about the Martian atmosphere is so important?
I mean, anything about Mars is important. I think, I mean, whether you're studying the atmosphere or let's say you're studying the surface of Mars or what's underneath the surface. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And from our point of view, we thought it's something that's unique, something that's needed, something that would add value. And also when it comes to the risk management aspect of the mission and delivering what the government wanted us to deliver on, it suited a lot of these requirements. So as you mentioned, our partners in LASP in the University of Colorado, they have experience with Martian atmosphere. It was very important for us to find the right partner who has the right mindset, who has the right culture, team culture that would work with our team. Because when we delivered the mission, we worked in the mission, we operated as one team. There was no different identities. There was no Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. There was no University of Colorado. There was no Arizona State University. It was actually all one team. It was Emirates Mars Mission Team. You had a group of Emiratis working under US personnel, US personnel working under Emiratis. It was all mixed. It was one team, which was very important for us to be able to create that culture, that team culture that we needed, and part of our knowledge transfer program. So there is that explicit knowledge that you get through these collaboration, but what we care about the most is that tacit knowledge. And to be able to get that tacit knowledge, you need to adapt that team culture and learn from these organizations and transfer that culture here within the UAE. Of course, it will have to have an Emirati touch to it. It's important because at the end of the day, our system is different, our culture is different. But it's based on a system or a research and development culture that is working well, and it's derived by science.
And I think in that may be one of the most important parts of the Hope mission. We may come back to that. I've got a beautiful shot here of the spacecraft in the clean room being worked on, and some of those bunny-suited team members. Can't tell if they're Emirati or from your other partners on the team, but where is this clean room?
This is the test facility that we had to use in Boulder, Colorado. Because we don't have these facilities in the UAE. So what we ended up doing is whether renting facilities in Colorado, whether it's Ball Aerospace or any other facilities around the university, or utilizing the existing clean room that they had for the testing. For this specific acoustic test, we actually used the facilities in the university for that. But for example, for the vibration test and other kind of environmental testing, we had to utilize Ball Aerospace facilities.
While we're talking about facilities, let me ask you about the room that you're in right now. Is this part of your control center?
This is part of my control center. Our control center. It's the engineering operations room. Most of them currently are they have to operate because of COVID-19. So we put certain requirements on team members to minimize the number of team members that need to operate from the center. So we have them currently working, but some of them are working from home. So if I go to the command and control room, I wouldn't be able to hold this discussion there because the team members are busy over there. And I have some team members who are actually in a different room. So I thought I might as well just use this because it has a nice background.
Yes.
But yeah, so COVID again, I mean, it's still posing a challenge for us. Our team members, I mean, before MOI, we're being tested once a week for COVID. And now basically just before MOI, we started having them tested every 2 days, just to make sure that, you know, they're safe because we are a small team. If someone gets affected or something, then it will have a big impact on us and we cannot afford that. So that's why we're a little bit cautious of that, and we're providing these tests for them and making sure that they follow these procedures, and we make them work from home. So it's actually, we have operators operating from here and engineers analyzing the data from here, but also I have engineers working currently as we speak from home and contributing to the operations of the spacecraft.
I'm hearing so many of these stories from associates and guests around the world. It was just a couple of days ago that I talked to somebody from JPL who was working on the InSight mission, who has not been to JPL for about a year, he told me, and then got a photo from someone who is actually communicating with the Perseverance rover, which of course is arriving at Mars next week as we speak. And he said, this is probably the last night I will have the Mission Control Center at JPL to myself. And because of these pandemic concerns, they're going to have to put some more people in there next week when things start getting busy, as they did for you this week. It is shocking to see how the pandemic has affected people exploring space, just as it has affected the rest of humanity. But let's hope that we're coming to the end of this. I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about your team. And of course, the leader of the science side of the team is, well, first we have this shot. And I think this is a shot of a lot of the members of your team. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so this shot was taken basically on the day that we announced the mission concept to the world. The UAE in 2014, July 2014, announced that we'll be sending a mission to Mars. But we didn't announce the detail of it yet because we needed to work that out with our partners. So by that point, we knew who our partner is going to be. And basically we thought we can announce and work with them. It's part of that learning process. And because one of the things also that the government wanted us to be very clear about in this mission is to be fully transparent. And if you start working on a mission without informing the world, it's just going to look, it's not going to satisfy that requirement. So we started by choosing our partners, and it was announced in 2014 that we're going to send some spacecraft, a mission to Mars. And in May 2015, we shared the mission concept, which we developed with our knowledge transfer partners and the team that you see in front of you. And basically, and this is what that was, that event. And that event, basically, we announced the name of the probe, and that was basically Hope Probe, which is basically hope for the Arab youth, hope for the Emirati youth. It's about the future, and that the message that comes with this mission. Unlike other Mars missions that usually tend to have more of just a scientific objective as a driver for them. In our case, it was that scientific objective, but also other strategic objectives, which includes basically inspiring Emirati youth to go into STEM, build our knowledge and science capacity and capability in the UAE, to create an advanced science technology sector that would support a competitive, or the creation of a competitive, innovative, and creative knowledge-based economy. So it's about the future of our economy, and also about addressing our national challenges and having the science base and skills that we have here to address those national challenges, such as water resources and food resources, which requires technologies to be developed to be able to address and develop those technologies customized to our needs. So that was, this picture reflects that day in which the detail was shared with the rest of the world. And as you can see in the picture, the spacecraft originally, based on our concept, had 3 solar panels. But then as we started our detailed design, we went into basically the system design review, we went into the system requirements review, and then by the time we reached the preliminary design review, we started realizing, okay, it will be very nice and efficient to have the 3 solar panels, but it seems like we won't be able to meet the time frame that we need to be able to completely test this kind of structure. So we decided to go with a slightly more traditional approach of having a rectangular structure with 2 solar panels, which worked well for us. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there's certain drivers that we had to deal with and we couldn't change. For example, for us, the time frame is not something we could have changed, and the budget is not something we could have changed. It was set from the beginning, and we got a very clear direction that you need to deliver before the 2nd of December, 2021, and you need to be within that budget. Of course, the government and the leadership was very clear with us, as in, like, failure is an option. We understand the risks. We understand that there are risks associated with this approach, but we need to come up with a new way of doing things, an Emirati model of delivering such missions in a more cost-effective way, in a more efficient way.
And it's quite an accomplishment. And of course, I don't know of any spacecraft that didn't evolve over time from the initial thoughts about what they would look like, how they would function, what they would carry, to what actually makes it into space. That certainly is true for Hope as well. I think something else that is represented in this image is something that I've talked in the past with you and your colleague, Her Excellency Sarah bint Youssef Al Amiri, the leader of the science team for the mission. And that is by that front row of folks there. It's the high percentage of women that are involved in the project, but not just that, the high percentage of relatively young people that are on the Hope team, both on the engineering and science sides. And I think this is also something that's very significant and worth mentioning again.
Yeah, for us, I mean, we do have about 34% the percentage of women and female in our mission. And every single one of them is in the mission, not because they're female or they're women, it's because they've earned it. Within the mission, I have 8 deputies. Amongst them was the minister at that point. So out of the 8 deputies, 4 are women. And every single one of them is there because she earned it. So in our case, currently what we do as a team in general, and even in the UAE in general, the opportunity is there, and whoever is the right person, and whoever is able to to perform the best and earn that position, then that person is getting that position, regardless of the gender.
This is exactly what we heard from Sarah as well. And speaking of Sarah, Her Excellency, I mean, here she is. But I included this slide because of what it represents, because it looks like it is part of this other very important part of the Hope mission, which is the outreach, especially to young people. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. It is one of the strategic goals that the government put for us. I mean, the government was very clear with us at the beginning. They said, you're going to have to inspire Emirati youth, you're going to have to inspire Emirati Arab youth, and you're going to have to inspire also all the youth in the UAE, regardless of their nationality. So that's why we had to be very engaged with them. The government wanted to see a drastic change in the mindset of the youth here. They wanted to see a drastic change in multiple sectors that are core to our economy, whether it's the academic sector or the industrial sector. And it wanted our mission to be a catalyst for that change. And the government was very clear when it said that it's not about reaching Mars. Going to Mars is a mean and a tool for a much bigger objective, and we need to see that impact. And we've seen that impact, and we sensed it. Obviously, we won't be able to measure it as accurately as we would like to at this point. Probably to be able to measure the impact accurately, we'll have to wait at least for another 5 to 10 years, maybe 15 years to see that, to measure it. But we can definitely qualitatively measure it and feel it and see it and prove it.
So much broader and perhaps much more important goals, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have had a spacecraft that has successfully made it to Mars, making the UAE only the 5th nation to achieve this, to have a mission arrive successfully at the Red Planet. It's something to be very proud of.
And the reason also why we're able to do that in such a short time frame and with such a limited budget, I have to say, is because the UAE's approach, and this is core to our model also that we'd like to share with the rest of the world, our experience, is that the UAE didn't look at it as a race. We looked at it as a cooperation. We leveraged on international cooperation, on science diplomacy, on working with others and not starting from scratch. I remember the first meeting that we had with the Prime Minister when we were talking about this mission. He said it very clear. He's like, build it, don't buy it. However, don't start from scratch. Learn from others, work with others, and go through knowledge transfer programs. But there needs to be a core and a significant Emirati contribution to the mission, but don't start from scratch, but you need to build it. And this is why for us, the Mars orbit insertion was actually a very critical phase, is because this platform is for the first time, this Emirati platform goes into space and gets used in space this way. We never fired our thrusters for 27 minutes nonstop. You cannot test that on Earth, because if you do, you'll damage your thrusters. So for us, it was a very risky operations. I mean, for some nations, they say, I mean, it should be fine. But then if other nations, they send platforms, let's say that they have heritage with, whether they used it around the moon or other planets or around Mars, doesn't matter, but they've used it. For us, it's a totally new platform, totally new mission architecture with a quite novel approach in which we didn't go with the traditional approach of going with full-on redundancy and all that. We went with a selective redundancy approach. We went with the approach of simplicity and reducing the number of instruments and keeping the system simple so that we can test it more. So our number one priority was testing. And we didn't stop testing until even Mars orbit insertion, we're still testing the system. So that was our approach to this mission. And we hope to share this kind of experience with the rest of the world, because as we can see, I mean, resources are limited, whether it's human resources, whether it comes to funds, and the priorities are different. But then we need also to be pushed out of our comfort zone to be able to innovate and be creative to serve humanity. And being more cost effective and cost efficient is important in such missions, I believe.
Amran, I'm going to let you rest for a moment or two here, but we will come back to the UAE's plans for space exploration and space development. I'm hoping you'll be able to talk a little bit about the future in a few minutes. I do have one more slide, and I love this of looking at them working on circuit boards, which I assume are now circling Mars. And I imagine it must make your team very proud to think about this achievement.
It does. It does. I mean, I had a team that was based in the UAE working on the mission, but then I also had another team that was Emirati engineers and experts working in Colorado for 5 years. They were based there for 5 years, and then I had a third team that was traveling back and forth between the UAE, and that kind of work happened here, but also that kind of work will happen in Colorado and in between. So all of them are happy, and all of them are very proud to see things that they've worked on as actually orbiting the red planet.
Okay, well, like I said, I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes, and look forward now to talking with Andrew. Andrew Jones, you've been very patient through all of this. I hope you found this as interesting as I have. And I would love to hear any questions that you might have for Amran as well. But of course, we also want to talk about that other big success last week. Welcome once again.
Thanks. And first, Amran, congratulations, many congratulations for the success. And also that fascinating and very rich introduction to the mission and the background. That was wonderful. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Andrew.
So as we said, Andrew, not even 24 hours after the arrival of EMM, the Hope spacecraft from the United Arab Emirates, we saw Tianwen-1 arrive in orbit around China. I'll go to an image, and maybe this can be the start of you talking to us about this mission, because this image in itself is worth talking about. It's an actual image of the spacecraft in flight. How did China achieve this?
Yeah, this image here, this was a bit of a surprise, or quite a surprise, to be honest. I think this was taken in October, and certainly released on October 1st. So it was China's People's Republic of China's National Day. So what they did is many millions of kilometers from Earth, they detached a small kind of panel spacecraft which had a camera on both sides. And as it was tumbling away from the spacecraft, it took pictures and sent these to the spacecraft, which were then transferred back home and decoded and everything. So what we got to see in deep space was Tianwen-1 on its way. So this was kind of an unprecedented image, and quite a stunt, to be honest. So this was very good to see. Also, especially good to see because for the Hope mission, we had a countdown. We had the Emirates mission website. We had the insight into the team, which was great to follow. For the Tianwen-1 mission, we didn't really have anything apart from radio silence from China. So we were kind of scrambling around looking for a web stream, and there was something from China Central Television, but that was via an app, which you can't, if you're outside of China, you can't even download sometimes, depending on your ecosystem and so on. So it's very hard to know what was going on. But at the same time, we had these radio enthusiasts or radio operators who call themselves amateurs, but they are very, very skilled. And what they were doing was using a 20-meter dish in Bochum in Germany to actually pick up the signals. So we're able to work out where Tianwen-1 was, when we expected the braking burn for the orbit insertion, and then when we could expect it to come back the other side of Mars and pick up the signal. And from the Doppler shifts, we're able to say, okay, look, this looks like, everything's going well. And then a few minutes later, we got the official news from China that Tianwen-1 was in the intended orbit, shall we say. So yeah, it's been very, very interesting to follow this mission in a number of ways, and not quite so easily or as clearly as others.
What a contrast with what the UAE's openness about the Hope mission, Amran. I mean, I was on the Chinese news, the Chinese Space Agency's news site yesterday, and more than 24 hours after orbital insertion, there was still not a press release posted on that site. Andrew, we still know a fair amount about this spacecraft. In fact, we can tell quite a bit just from looking at this image. I mean, we're looking at really two spacecraft, right? I mean, there is the orbiter, which has now joined so many others in orbit above Mars, including Hope. But you can see that aeroshell, which I assume has a rover inside it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the orbiter is in its highly elliptical orbit right now. And over the next 2 or 3 months, there will be a lowering of the orbit and observations of an area of Utopia Planitia in preparation for the landing of a rover, which will be about 240 kilograms. So it's kind of comparable to Opportunity and Spirit. So, you know, a serious rover here. And I've lost the thread of what.
Well, I mean,
what
we can go on to the rover actually, because I have an image of it here. Whoops, I got to get to the right window to advance it. I'm not expecting you to take us in detail through all of this, but here are your representation, sort of cartoonish, of that rover and the many instruments. I mean, China has crowded a lot onto this this little rover.
That's right. So we've got 6 instruments here with a range of science goals here, and there's another 7 on the orbiter. So after, I think the head of CNSA said yesterday that they're planning the landing in 100 days. So I don't know if he was just talking on a general level in around about 100 days, because the contractor said May to June would be the landing. So we're still wondering when it will be, but 100 days would be, I think it was 21st of May. So yeah, we've got quite a package of instruments here. So some that we haven't seen on Mars before. So for example, there's a ground penetrating radar, which will give fascinating insights into the subsurface. So I think that Perseverance is also bringing one along as well. So to have 2 of these instruments working in different spots would allow not just new science data, but also some level of comparison. So that's going to be fascinating if both of these can make the landing. One thing that China's very interested in looking into here, if we focus on the radar, would be water ice. So the idea would be to get to follow up detections of water ice made from Sharad, which I think was on Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and Marsis, which was on, is it Mars Express from ESA? So to follow up on those readings, which suggest pockets of water and water ice in the subsurface. And there's another radar on the orbiter, so that would give 2 different levels of insight and be able to back each other up in a sense. But one thing that was apparent in choosing the location, so this area of Utopia Planitia, so to the south of Viking 2, there are kind of polygonal land formations there, which are theorized that you could have water running down below into pockets below the surface. So a team actually took a similar ground penetrating radar out into the Kaodam Basin in West China. And the idea was to do analog tests to see what they could pick up. So this team was saying that they were able to detect pockets of briny water. And of course, briny water is of great interest on Mars. So the idea is that they go there, find these pockets, and that would be one candidate for hosting extremophiles. So we're talking about possibilities for detecting an environment which could harbor life. And the other thing that was mentioned to me by one Chinese planetary scientist was that the detections of water ice, for example, would be very important for potential human missions in the future in terms of resources. So this is, of course, China's first interplanetary mission, but also very ambitious, and they have their eyes on some very intriguing science.
So it sounds like even though we have found a lot of water on Mars, one of the goals is still follow the water, as NASA used to say. Amran, Hope's work looking at the atmosphere of Mars, that's a part of that search as well, isn't it?
It is. I mean, understanding also that ice clouds and humidity and the changes that happen around Mars, it's important for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like using this term because I really would like to emphasize the scientific nature of this mission. But I mean, some scientists consider our mission as the first weather satellite of Mars.
I have heard that. Andrew, it's quite an accomplishment if China is able to pull this off, to put a rover on the surface of Mars. What are the plans that China may have for the future at Mars? I mean, are you familiar with any of these? Do they publicize what they hope to do?
Yeah, China actually has a space exploration roadmap. So this runs from, I think it was like late last decade up until 2030. So in there we see a mission to near Earth asteroid, which will then take samples back to Earth and then go off to a main belt comet. So there's some exciting stuff in there. Jupiter would be the next step beyond Mars. But for Mars particularly, around 2028 or 2030, depending on which rockets they use and which launch window they can get ready for, what they are looking to do as a next step is a Mars sample return. So there's very few details available on this, but it's in the science papers which are being published from senior officials from the Chinese space program. It's been mentioned in the space white papers, which they release every 5 years, and there should be another one coming at the end of this year. So that would be good to get an update on this. But yeah, as you can see, going to Mars first time independently, with both an orbiter and a rover is very ambitious. And then to go for a next step to a Mars sample return, which is something that's never been done. Yeah, clearly China is looking to pick up the pace and do things which haven't been done in space before. So NASA and ESA are combining to work on their own concept, and that could launch as early as 2026, I think. But yeah, I don't like to talk about space races because that's a tired analogy. But I mean, this could actually be one area in which you would have some level of competition, at least in terms of who can get samples from Mars and bring them back first. Because that would quite simply be unprecedented and could be one of the biggest breakthroughs in science that we've had ever.
And I often call it the holy grail for Mars scientists, getting those samples back to laboratories on Earth, which have so much greater capability than anything that we can put on the surface of Mars on a robotic spacecraft or rover right now. And of course, Perseverance, as we're talking about through much of this weekend at PlanetFest, is the first step in that NASA-ESA plan to return samples. How interesting this is going to be, seeing who manages to do this. And of course, if they are both successful, even better. Amran, I'll come back to you and talk about this interest globally by more nations, now including the UAE, that have this capability for interplanetary missions and the successes at Mars that we are seeing, and how you feel about the UAE's place within this these many actors who are sending right now anyway robotic emissaries to Mars.
So I mean, again, for us, the drivers are a little bit different. I mean, it's more about the impact. It's more about addressing certain needs that we have here, and we're using such missions to do that. At the same time, we want to contribute in the scientific kind of activities that's happening globally in exploring, other planets and more specifically the red planet. So, I mean, it feels good to be among the nations who are able to do things differently and bring new knowledge to humanity that's never happened before, or that humanity never had before, and definitely emphasizes that culture of us being the citizens of Earth and us coexisting and accepting differences and working together and collaborating as citizens of Earth rather than as individuals from different nations. So the hope here is for the UAE to be able to contribute, but with a more collaborative approach between nations, in which it's more of an inclusive approach in which we include more nations in such missions. And I think the model the UAE used here could be an excellent lessons learned that we can build on new models and new approaches to this, but to be more inclusive of people, which, if you think about it in the long term, will be much more efficient and effective. Budgets are a big part of these missions, and at the end of the day, you need to justify the budget to the public, and it gets harder by day. So that's what we hope to bring to this community of explorers of planets.
Andrew, I got just one more image here, also captured, well, this one directly by Tianwen-1. As it was approaching Mars, I think it captured this not too many days ago. I guess we can look forward to much more of this sort of imagery.
Absolutely. So the orbiter has two different cameras. So it has a medium resolution kind of wide angle camera and a high resolution camera, which I think at periapsis, which is about 265 kilometers. So they are saying that they'll be able to get resolution of better than half a meter per pixel. So we should be getting fantastic images. And that's one thing that they'll be doing ahead of the landing, is to image the landing site. So that image there was taken, I think it was 2.2 million kilometers away, so very far away, in grayscale, like many of these space cameras do. So my understanding is these cameras won't be turned on until they're around about 800 kilometers away from Mars. So Tianwen-1 is in, I think, a 400 times 180,000 kilometer orbit, with, I think that's a 10-day orbital period. So in about 4 days from now, it's actually going to change its inclination at when it reaches apoapsis, and then go into a polar orbit, so it can image, the whole planet from that orbit. So I don't think we might not see. I was hoping that we'd get something soon, but based on the fact that the cameras will be turned off unless they're very close to Mars, we might not see anything for a week and a half. But there's always surprises when following the Chinese space program. So, but they'll be worth waiting for anyway, these images.
Andrew, you've already demonstrated that you have broad knowledge of the plans that China has for exploration of space. What about humans in space? We know that they seem to be slowly moving toward putting humans on the moon. Has there been any discussion that you're aware of in China about putting men and women on Mars?
I've seen kind of a notional mention of this after the 2050s, or in the 2050s. So this kind of vague timeline was given where, space station for the next 10 years, astronauts on the moon in the 2030s, and then looking at Mars in the 2050s. But I haven't seen anything, very concrete. So the challenges that we have of getting humans to Mars are so large. So I don't know what the mission architecture would look like this far out, or what the partners would be, based on the current geopolitical context and everything. So it's very hard to say anything about this other than they have expressed an interest in sending astronauts one day to Mars. So like many other places around the world, that's something that they'd ultimately want to see or to do.
Aspirational. Amran, I said we would come back to you to hear a little bit more about the UAE's future plans for space, not just out there at Mars, but maybe closer to home here in Earth orbit. Can you say something about the future plans there?
So the UAE does have a plan for the space sector and for basically for different missions. Obviously, now we're focusing on the current mission and making sure that we're trying to actually start our science phase, because this is very important for us as a learning process even. We need to reach there and be able to benefit from this mission and see how the scientific community will be using this and understand the gaps that we have in our ecosystem. But the plans are there. It will be announced at the right time. But what I can say is basically that the next phase will be more focused on including the private sector and the industry in the UAE. So in the past, our missions were focused on bringing knowledge into the space sector in the UAE from outside. Now the time has come for us to start shifting that knowledge to our industry and to our private sector. And that's going to be the driver of the missions that we'll be working on in the future.
Gentlemen, we are not going to have our full hour here because we know that people want to get on to other things that are happening at PlanetFest over this weekend. I really just want to thank both of you once again for contributing to our terrific programming this weekend. And thank you for sharing your expertise. I will ask if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share. Andrew, we can start with you.
No, I just want to say congratulations again. I look forward to following Hope, and that really is a tremendous achievement. And I hope to see that it bears the fruit that you hope it brings.
Well said.
Sure.
Amran, any final thoughts?
I would like to congratulate China for their successful Mars orbit insertion, and also I would like to wish our colleagues and friends in the US the successful arrival of Perseverance next week. I'm looking forward. The whole team is looking forward for data and information from all missions that are arriving this year. And one message I would like to send to everyone and emphasize the importance of international collaboration. If it wasn't for international collaboration, we wouldn't be able to deliver the mission with the time frame that we had and with the budget that we had. And we have an example now of a mission that is orbiting Mars that was able to do that because of collaboration, because of transparency. And I highly encourage different players within the space community globally to reconsider approaches, to come up with new ways of doing things, not just in collaborating, but also when it comes to developing and delivering such missions. The simpler we make it, the easier we can include people. The more complicated we make it, the less inclusive these missions will be.
Excellent. Also well said. Amran, thank you again as well. Congratulations again to you, the entire EMM Hope team, and the people of the UAE and elsewhere, your partners at the University of Colorado, Arizona State University, and elsewhere, who have made this mission so successful so far. We look forward to getting those science results as Hope reveals more about the red planet to all of us.
Thank you.
And Andrew, I look forward to talking to you more on Planetary Radio, and especially to reading more about what you are able to learn about the Chinese space program as it continues its ambitious journey out across the solar system. Thanks a lot, and look forward to talking to you.
Thanks very much, Matt.
And with that, I think we are ready to move on here at PlanetFest. I hope that you will be joining many of our other sessions. Of course, we have a terrific lineup tomorrow, Sunday as well. And I will be seeing you in several of those sessions as serving as your moderator. Thank you again for joining us, especially those of you who are members of the Planetary Society. Thank you for making all of this possible. I'm Matt Kaplan, the host of Planetary Radio that you can hear every week at planetary.org and from all the usual podcast sources across the web. And hope that you'll be able to join us for our next episode of Planetary Radio. Thanks again for joining us.